Now, likewise, Mr. Grosvenor, what you're doing with American Heritage Magazine and your saving of it and revitalizing it about 2 years ago to this date is also preserving something that is vitally important. Now, it may not be physical, as you say, by like going to Mount Vernon or Monticello or Montpelier or Ashlon or other places like that, or Gettysburg, but it is important that people read and understand and are inspired by our fascinating history and look at the challenges that our country faced from its very beginning throughout its history. And those of us in Virginia, of course, are very proud of all of that, and we've been hanging around now for 402 years, and we were the cradle of American democracy and freedom. And when I was governor, we put in standards of learning, and it's important that young people learn how to read and write and speak the English language and learn higher levels of math and science. But we also had history standards, history of Virginia, of America, and major civilizations of the world, as well as economics. And just earlier this year, the Virginia Board of Education was thinking of getting rid of the history testing. If you don't test it, if you don't measure it, the standards won't be taught. And so I wrote the Board of Education and said, I've seen through my own children how they can understand about history of the world and of Virginia and economic principles. And now more than ever, history is important. If somebody doesn't understand the history, they're going to make mistakes and will not understand the foundational principles. In fact, you run into young people, Mr. Grosvenor, who come up to me and they say, oh, I'd like to be governor, I'd like to be senator, I want to be a member of Congress, as if there's a recipe to it, and they're taking political science courses. Well, I majored in history and took no political science courses, and I tell them, I said, let somebody else do the political science. You can hire those buzzards on to do all that kind of stuff. Learn about the history of our country, the foundational principles. You have to have your own guiding philosophy to make decisions, and that's why American heritage is so important. Now, I am not going to quote George Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, Mason. You have James Madison here, so I'm not going to quote. There you are, Mr. Madison. And my daughter goes to your college, JMU. At any rate, but I was earlier this year. I'm going to quote a person named Clark Gaines. None of y'all know who Clark Gaines is? Even football fans can't hardly remember who Clark Gaines was. He was a running back for the Buffalo Bills. Susan and I, my wife Susan and I, were at the dedication of the new offices for the NFL Players Association. And so they're dedicating it after Gene Upshaw, who passed away suddenly, just a great guy. And here's what Clark Gaines said. He's now the Assistant Executive Director of the Players Union. He said, an organization without history is like a person without a soul. An organization without a history is like a person without a soul. Now that's from a football player. Now any organization, any community, any state, any country does have to have that grounding of history. It gives you an idea of guidance, it gives you inspiration, it gives you a sense of direction from our forebears and predecessors. And so my view is this American Heritage Magazine ought to be in every school library. It really ought to be. Your 35 decisive moments in American history, I think, is fantastic. It's controversial. So people are going to have debates over what should be. I think the Louisiana Purchase should have been in there. I think it's the best real estate deal ever in it. But the fact is that you have people discussing, and then you debate with an informed debate as to, well, do you think that should be in? Well, what would you knock out? And they say, well, I don't think such and such was as important as that. And indeed, I majored in history, and I didn't realize the importance of the Spanish massacre of the French at Fort Caroline in 1565, that you say in here steered the country in a different direction. That if the French had not been massacred by the Spanish in Florida near St. Augustine, then the French would have had that dominance there, not just in Canada. So then, you just think of, it makes you think, all right, gosh, if the French were there, they probably would not have found the Fountain of Youth any more than Ponce de Leon did. So we'd all still be getting older. But just think of that difference. Now, they probably still would have had Louisiana, but would they have had to sell Louisiana to the United States to fight the British? They probably would have been on our side because they're always fighting the British anyway in our secession from the monarchy. But would France have been so strong that they would have been able to beat the Romanovs in Russia? And if they hadn't beaten the Romanovs in Russia, then you wouldn't have had the Bolshevik Revolution later against that corrupt, inept monarchy. You wouldn't have had the Soviet Union or a communist government. You would not have had the Cold War. I mean, but it makes you just think like that. Now, that may be way nutty and so forth, but these things, whoever came up with the massacre in Florida, it changed our country, but it changed the world. And it gets people thinking that as we make decisions now. And it's vitally important that we have an informed citizenry in our republic. So I thank all of you all, the whole American Heritage team led by Mr. Grosvenor. Thank you for keeping this alive, revitalizing it, making sure that history comes alive and it inspires people, motivates people, gets people thinking. And so I know that you're going to strive for the best. Everything you do is of top quality. And I thank you for keeping the spirit of American freedom and liberty alive in the hearts and minds of people of all ages. Congratulations. Keep winning.
Thank you.